In just 5 days, Texas could execute a potentially innocent man, and now there's a growing push to halt his execution. Ivan Cantu has been on death row since 2001 for allegedly killing his cousin and his cousin's fiance. He has maintained his innocence the entire time. But now, due to work from his lawyers and independent researchers, new evidence casts serious doubt on Cantu's conviction. Multiple claims made by a witness that were key to his conviction have since been disproven. Jurors found from his trial have publicly expressed support for his appeal, including the foreman, by the way. Cantu's fingerprints were not found on the murder weapon, only a magazine that could have easily been inserted later. Phone records obtained by Cantu's legal team show that someone placed a call from inside his apartment while he was out of town, which his lawyers argue could raise serious concerns about the ease with which someone could have planted bloody clothes that were found in his home later. Additionally, one of the key witnesses in his case, Jeff Bottcher, came forward in 2021 to recant his testimony and admit he lied. A 2022 video of his conversation with an investigator and an attorney who traveled from Texas to Minnesota to meet with him shows a distressed Bottcher saying that he lied during his testimony. He admitted that at the time of his trial, he was in a difficult point in his life and his testimony wasn't reliable given he was out of the state at the time of the murders and was a frequent drug user. Bottcher expressed remorse that his testimony helped land Cantu on death row. Now, Sister Helen Prejean, who is a death penalty abolitionist, has been leading a campaign to halt Cantu's execution. She's gathered over 110,000 signatures on a petition calling for Texas officials to intervene. Her advocacy was noticed by Kim Kardashian, who has spent the last several days posting across her social media channels to over 400 million followers collectively, asking for them to take action. Just today, she wrote, "Ivan has 5 days to live. Please sign the petition to demand that Collin County DA Greg Willis request to withdraw the execution date." And just today, the Dallas Morning News editorial board published an op-ed calling for Cantu's execution to be halted and condemning the death penalty overall. They wrote, "In 2024, the death penalty is both unnecessary and morally wrong. The state of Texas should not be in the business of taking human life. We don't know for certain if Cantu is guilty. There's clearly significant reason to doubt he is. Nonetheless, Texas would be wrong if it killed him next week." Now, it's worth noting that for every 8 people executed in this country, 1 is exonerated. And since 1973, nearly 200 people on death row have been exonerated. So it's clearly an imperfect process, flawed by the limitations of human ability. I mean, what do you think of this? Do you think his life will be saved by this activism? Do you think it's something that people need to consider deeply? What do you make of this story?
Yeah, so I have an interesting background on this. As some of you might know if you watch Young Turks for a while, I used to be in favor of the death penalty earlier in my life. I even had a huge debate with Mario Cuomo, former governor of New York, about the death penalty, and we battled back and forth. And there's still a lot of points that I believe are correct about deterrence, and I know that drives people on the left crazy when I say that, but I'll take that battle to the end of my life. Deterrence is real. People act on incentives and disincentives. Now, having said that, I haven't been in favor of the death penalty for a long time. Why? Easy to understand. We were going to execute 200 innocent people. I mean, if you watched for a long time, you've heard me say this many times, but it's one thing to kill a guy who did it, like, oh my God, he murdered some kids or something. Well, then the vengeance side of me comes out. It's another thing to kill people who didn't do it. That's just mental. And so in this case, we have significant doubt. First of all, that should be the end of the question. On a localized individual basis, who would kill someone where some of the witnesses recanted their testimony, said I was lying? Are you nuts? Why would we kill that guy? I can't believe anybody would want to kill that guy, right? I'm not saying to let him out of prison. You could argue about, hey, waste the court's time to do an appeal or to retry the case, etc., and maybe we keep him in prison. Okay, we could have those arguments, but to kill him when witnesses said, oh, I was lying? No, it's just crazy. That's nuts. But it's also nuts when you look at the big picture. Obviously we have doubt. It turns out we're killing 12.5% wrong people. You can't You cannot continue that policy if you're a decent person. Who says, yeah, I don't mind killing a couple hundred extra innocent people? Who says that? And that is what you're saying if you say you're in favor of the death penalty.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's. I think we need to recognize one of the big issues that haunt us in this country is our brutal prison system, and not just the existence of private prisons, which should never exist. Prisons that are for profit, where you make money out of locking people up, many who might be innocent or some who might be innocent, but you even make money off of killing people. Or even the fact that the prison system is one of the biggest employers in this country, and in certain states quite high. Okay, so given all that, if law is supposed to follow moral and cultural standards on a philosophical level, which is like, I guess, what it was always supposed to be about, the standard for an action that would end one's life should probably be extremely high and probably more or less irrefutable. But I guess I have to ask the question, given that killings of people on, per the death penalty are quite widespread in this country, certainly compared to almost any other sort of so-called Western or democracy in the world, kind of advanced democracy, so to speak. I don't know what that means. I'm not sure we're in advanced democracy any longer, so take that back. But it's like the false positives, if it's 12.5%, one eighth, it's likely even higher because I would guess many cases are not fully investigated post factum. So I guess that leaves me with the question that I want to ask both of you, which is why culturally have we sort of normalized this? And how is that connected to other cultural norms that we've sort of accepted in this country, like people can have assault weapons or guns, killing guns, not rifles or single gauge or what have you, right? What exactly is making this still happen? And how do we deal with this?
Unfortunately, it's the same thing that makes almost everything malady in this country happen, which is Republican politicians go, I don't care, innocent, not innocent. Who cares? Just kill them, right? And that way it'll feel like I'm a tough guy and my base will vote for me. Oh, it's so tough to kill innocent people. Oh, that guy's great. And Democrats never fight back. In this case, there's no corporate interest other than the private prisons, but even so for the death penalty, they don't need the death penalty for private prisons. So there's really no corporate interest, no donor interest there, which is rare. But even so, Democrats have taught themselves to be weak, so they don't know how to fight back. So not progressives, not people on the left. You see some great death penalty opponents who are wonderful in being able to fight back and really good at this and bringing attention to an issue, et cetera. In fact, I think this is a slight side point here, but about 100 to 150 Palestinians die every day from the bombings. Yeah. And so I wish we had advocates as good on that issue as we do on the death penalty. And that it's taken them decades to learn how to get media attention, how to push forward together at the same time so you save one person's life, and I love them for doing that. And by the way, great credit to Kim Kardashian, who's taken on the idea that maybe we shouldn't kill innocent people and maybe we shouldn't keep them in prison. And if that's her charitable cause, what a wonderful cause, right? So these people are really good. I wish we had the same kind of apparatus, but even larger, to protect Palestinian lives, because it's not just one person 5 days from now. It's 100 people or 150 people, and every single day, right? And it's not just Palestine and Gaza. Same thing with when Saudi Arabia was bombing Yemen. So Saudi Arabia's, like when Syria killed massive number of civilians, there wasn't much we could do other than invade, right? But when it's a so-called ally like Saudi Arabia dropping bombs on Yemen, there's a lot we can do, right? And we choose not to do that. But back to the death penalty, why don't the Democrats fight back, especially when they have such great role models in the death penalty opponent movement that have done this so well? Because they don't want to bother. They don't want to get called weak. Michael Dukakis was portrayed as weak. And remember, the Democrats are stuck in the 1990s. They cannot get out of that mindset. They're frozen in amber between the 70s and 90s. So they're like, Michael Dukakis in a tank, Michael Dukakis, Willie Horton, we must say we are just as bad as Republicans. We're just as vicious. Should we put on fake blood in our hands or mouth or something? I'm like, no, you should be a decent human being and make obvious moral cases that we're making here. Trust the country to be moral. Yes, I know the right-wing base doesn't want it, but the overwhelming majority of the country does. But Democrats don't trust their voters, and that's why we're in the situation that we're in.
That dynamic that you talk about, where Democrats aren't speaking out about it, you don't have enough people condemning this, it's a difficult topic. Because in some cases, you're having to relitigate potentially someone committing heinous crimes. It's really uncomfortable for anybody to do it. So when someone like Sister Helen actually does it, and you know she's coming from a good place, like her life is committed to being a good person, right? And that's what's so interesting to me about Kardashian speaking out about it, because how many other celebrities would do that? I mean, Martin Sheen spoke out, Jane Fonda, but they're like known for being involved. Kim Kardashian taking up the mantle of like criminal justice reform and anti-death penalty activism is very interesting to me. Some might say it's cynical and calculated, whatever, but like so many people in her position would just turn a blind eye to it. And when you bring up the Saudi blockade and attacks on Yemen, I mean, people need to remember when you're staying silent in moments like that because it's uncomfortable, because whatever, you're unfamiliar with it. I've seen it thrown around a lot by pro-Israel advocates, pro-Israel commentators. Oh, hey, whoa, suddenly you care about people in Gaza. Where were you when the US was doing this and Saudi Arabians were doing this to Yemeni people? I mean, thankfully we did something about it. I've got a tattoo to remind me to the rest of my life that we did something about it. But it's like, remember, in these moments, your silence can be used against you later on. So it's important to take up that mantle, even if it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to say I appreciate what was said in this op-ed. You know, if we don't know for certain if someone is guilty, the state should not be in the business of killing someone, and that is a morally egregious step to take. Somehow it's been culturally normalized, but I think it gets at one of the big issues both of you are touching on. What lives matter on this planet? I know we've talked about this before, right? Palestinian lives clearly matter less than Ukrainian lives, right? Somali lives, no one ever talks about Somali, like, you know, what's happening with those folks clearly don't matter as much as perhaps other lives, right? So if we have a moral litmus test where all life is sacred, certainly our Jewish brothers and sisters, our Muslim brothers and sisters, our Palestinian brothers and sisters, our Israeli brothers and sisters, that's what the litmus test, right? All life as sacred. And we have, of course, and I'm sure you've pointed this out before, the death penalty is obviously skewed again to black and brown peoples. And I just have to make that point.
Absolutely.
And working poor peoples, working class peoples.
Yep. Yeah. Not a lot of rich folks get the death penalty. And no one should get it.